Hello friends, welcome to Book Bites. Today we'll talk about book How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Muslish is a transformative guide for parents, teachers and caregivers who want to build a better, more cooperative relationship with children. First published in 1980, the book has become a timeless classic in the field of parenting, offering practical tools rooted in empathy, respect and emotional intelligence. It doesn't rely on discipline or control, but instead focuses on how we can connect more deeply with children through the words we choose and the way we listen. The authors, both mothers and educators, draw from their own experiences as well as from the teachings of child psychologist Dr. Ham Genoth. They realize that the everyday struggles most parents face, tantrums, backtalk, refusal to cooperate, are not necessarily signs of bad behavior, but often a child's attempt to express unmet needs or emotions they can't yet articulate. The way adults respond to those moments can either escalate the situation or create a space for understanding and growth. This book is structured around core communication principles that emphasize validating children's feelings, encouraging autonomy, and solving problems collaboratively. Each chapter presents techniques in a relatable comic strip style that shows real-life scenarios, making the advice easy to visualize and implement. Rather than resorting to yelling, bribing or punishing, the authors suggest ways to invite cooperation and reduce power struggles. Importantly, this book also recognizes the emotional challenges of parenting. It acknowledges that parents are human too, often stretched thin and overwhelmed. That's why the strategies are designed to be realistic and respectful, not just of the child's needs, but the parents as well. The result is a relationship that's based on trust, open dialogue and mutual respect. At its core, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen is not just about talking, it's about building a communication bridge between adults and children. A bridge where kids feel heard and understood, and where adults feel more effective and less frustrated. This book empowers parents to shift from control to connection, laying the foundation for long-lasting emotional health and cooperation in the family. Let's explore the concepts of the book, breaking them down point by point and refining the explanation to ensure clarity and precision. Point 1. Helping children deal with their feelings. One of the foundational principles of How to Talk So Kids Will Listen is the idea that children need their feelings to be acknowledged and validated before they can move on from them. Often, adults rush to fix, minimize or dismiss children's emotions with statements like, "It's not that bad," "Stop crying," or "You're overreacting." While well-intentioned, these responses can make children feel misunderstood or invalidated, causing their emotions to intensify or shut down altogether. Instead, the book encourages parents to listen with empathy and reflect their child's feelings without judgment. This can be done through simple statements like, "You seem really upset," or "It sounds like you're disappointed." By naming the emotion, the adult helps the child feel seen and understood. This kind of acknowledgement doesn't encourage the negative feeling, it actually helps children process and release it. The authors outline several effective techniques, giving the feeling a name, using words instead of questions or lectures, and responding with nonverbal gestures like nodding or offering a hug. For example, if a child says, "I hate school," instead of immediately defending the school or correcting the child, a more helpful response might be, "Wow, something must have happened to make you feel that way." This opens the door for further dialogue rather than shutting it down. One of the most powerful insights is that solving problems comes after acknowledging feelings. When a child feels emotionally supported, they become more open to solutions, reasoning and guidance. In contrast, when they feel dismissed, even logical advice can fall on deaf ears. Emotional validation is like watering the soil before planting seeds. It prepares the ground for real growth. This method also teaches children emotional intelligence. When adults model empathy and give language to feelings, children learn to recognize, name, and manage their emotions more effectively over time. This sets the stage for stronger mental health, better relationships, and improved self-awareness. Ultimately, helping children deal with their feelings isn't about indulgence, it's about connection. When children feel truly heard, their emotional storms pass more quickly, and the adult-child bond deepens. It's the first and most crucial step in building trust and open communication. Point 2. Engaging cooperation. Children are more likely to cooperate when they feel respected and understood, rather than when they are ordered or commanded. In How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, the authors emphasize that the way we speak to children can significantly impact how they respond. When we issue demands or use threats, we often provoke resistance. Instead, by engaging them with respectful communication, we invite their cooperation willingly and more peacefully. One effective strategy is to describe the problem instead of accusing or blaming. For instance, instead of saying, "You're so messy, clean up this room right now," a more cooperative approach would be, "I see books on the floor and clothes on the bed." Describing what you observe helps children focus on the issue without feeling personally attacked. Another technique is to offer choices. Giving children a sense of control can reduce power struggles. For example, instead of saying, "Put your shoes on now," you might say, "Would you like to wear your sneakers or sandals today?" This allows the child to feel empowered while still guiding them toward the desired action. Using one-word reminders is also powerful. Instead of long lectures, a simple teeth can remind a child it's time to brush. Children often tune out long explanations, so concise cues can be more effective. Writing notes is another creative strategy. Leaving a small note like, "Please turn me off when done," smiley face. The light switch can be a fun and gentle reminder for tasks children often forget. What all these methods have in common is respect for the child's autonomy and intelligence. When we treat children with dignity, they are more inclined to mirror that behavior back. This approach also helps reduce shouting, nagging, and unnecessary battles, making family life more harmonious. By focusing on positive engagement rather than forceful control, we not only improve cooperation but also foster responsibility, independence, and mutual respect. These techniques help children internalize good behavior rather than merely obeying out of fear or pressure. They begin to act responsibly not because they're being yelled at, but because they understand and feel involved in the process. Point 3. Alternatives to punishment. One of the core ideas in How to Talk So Kids Will Listen is that traditional punishment often fails to create lasting change. Instead of teaching kids how to behave better, punishment can lead to resentment, shame, and repeated misbehavior. The authors argue that children learn best through connection, understanding, and respectful guidance, not fear. When a child misbehaves, the natural reaction for many parents is to impose consequences like timeouts, taking away privileges, or scolding. But these actions often don't teach what to do. Instead, they simply stop the behavior momentarily, or worse, escalate it. The book encourages parents to shift their focus from punishing to problem solving. One alternative is to express your feelings strongly but safely. For example, instead of yelling, "You're so careless," say, "I'm really upset when I see juice spilled on my laptop, it could be ruined." This shows your genuine emotion without attacking the child's character. Another method is to state expectations clearly. Saying, "I expect you to hang your coat when you come in," reminds the child of the rule without punishment. Consistency and clarity are often more effective than anger. The authors also recommend giving a child a choice that involves responsibility. If toys are left scattered, say, "You can put them away now or after dinner, but they need to be picked up today." This allows children to feel in control while still learning accountability. Problem solving together is a powerful technique. Sit down with the child, acknowledge what went wrong, and brainstorm solutions. This might sound like, "You've been having trouble remembering your homework. What can we do to help you remember every day?" Inviting them into the solution makes them feel respected and more committed to following through. Finally, taking action without insult helps. If a child refuses to stop playing video games when time is up, quietly turning off the console is more effective than yelling. Action, when done calmly and respectfully, speaks louder than criticism. The goal is not to let kids get away with it, but to guide them in ways that help them learn self-control, empathy, and responsibility, skills that last far beyond childhood. Point 4. Encouraging autonomy. Faber and Maslish emphasize that one of the most empowering gifts a parent can give a child is the ability to think and act independently. Encouraging autonomy means allowing children to make decisions, take responsibility, and develop confidence in their own abilities. When children feel capable and trusted, they are more likely to become resilient, motivated, and self-reliant individuals. A common mistake many parents make is trying to solve every problem for their children or micromanage their daily activities. While this may seem helpful, it often sends a message that the child is not competent enough to handle things on their own. Over time, this can lead to dependence, insecurity, or defiance. Instead, the book suggests practical ways to support a child's growing independence while maintaining connection and guidance. One strategy is to let children make choices. Offering limited options such as, "Do you want apple slices or a banana for your snack?" gives children a sense of control within boundaries. These small choices help them practice decision-making in a safe environment. Another key technique is to show respect for a child's struggle. If a child is learning to tie their shoes and gets frustrated, instead of jumping in to do it for them, acknowledge their effort. It's really tricky to get those laces just right. Keep trying, you're almost there. This validates their experience and builds perseverance. Don't rush to answer every question. If a child asks something, try responding with "What do you think?" or "Let's find out together." This fosters curiosity and critical thinking. The authors also encourage giving children responsibility appropriate to their age. Letting them pack their own school bag, choose their outfit, or help with simple chores makes them feel valuable and teaches life skills. Avoiding excessive praise is another surprising but important idea. Instead of saying "You're so smart," focus on their effort or strategy. "You worked really hard on that puzzle, and you didn't give up." This builds a growth mindset, helping children believe that their abilities can improve with effort. Encouraging autonomy is not about leaving children to figure everything out on their own. It's about supporting them in becoming capable individuals who trust themselves and are ready to face life's challenges. Point 5. Praise effectively to build inner confidence. In traditional parenting, praise is often used as a go-to tool for encouraging good behavior or achievements. However, in How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, the authors suggest that not all praise is equally effective. In fact, some types of praise can lead to dependency on external validation rather than cultivating genuine self-worth. The goal, they argue, should be to build a child's inner confidence through thoughtful, descriptive praise. Instead of vague compliments like "good job" or "you're so smart," the authors recommend using descriptive praise, which focuses on specific actions and efforts. For example, if a child cleans their room, rather than saying "you're such a good kid," it's more effective to say, "I see you put all your books on the shelf and folded your clothes. That took effort and care." This kind of praise helps the child recognize exactly what they did well and encourages them to repeat it because they feel competent, not because they want to please others. Descriptive praise also reinforces internal motivation. When children understand what actions lead to success, they are more likely to take initiative and feel proud of their accomplishments. This kind of internal pride builds long-term confidence, as opposed to seeking constant approval from others. Another key aspect the book highlights is acknowledging effort over outcome. If a child doesn't win a game but played with determination, praising their effort, "You kept trying even when it got tough," reinforces resilience. It teaches that trying hard and learning from mistakes is valuable, even when the result isn't perfect. The authors also caution against labeling children through praise. Calling a child the smart one or the responsible one might seem positive but can create pressure and limit their sense of identity. If that child struggles, they may fear failure because it threatens their label. Instead, describe what you observe and let the child draw their own conclusions. In short, praise should not be about controlling or manipulating behavior, but about helping children see themselves as capable, growing individuals. When done right, praise becomes a mirror in which children can see their own strengths clearly and confidently. Point 6. Encourage autonomy and let kids make choices. One of the foundational principles in How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk is the importance of encouraging autonomy. Children need to feel a sense of control and independence in their lives to grow into confident, capable individuals. The book emphasizes that when parents allow children to make choices, it helps them develop critical thinking, responsibility, and emotional maturity. Instead of always telling children what to do, the authors suggest giving them limited, age-appropriate choices. For example, instead of saying "put on your jacket now," you might say, "Would you like to wear your red jacket or the blue one?" This approach allows the child to feel empowered while still achieving the necessary outcome. They participate in the decision, which makes them more likely to cooperate. Allowing children to make choices also teaches them consequences in a natural, non-punitive way. If a child decides not to take an umbrella on a cloudy day and gets wet, they learn to make better choices next time. This kind of experiential learning is far more effective than lectures or punishment. The authors also encourage parents to respect a child's struggle rather than jumping in to fix everything. For instance, if a child is trying to open a difficult jar, instead of immediately taking it away and doing it for them, a parent could say, "That jar is really tight. You're using a lot of strength." This validates the child's effort and shows trust in their ability to overcome challenges. Another key strategy is inviting children to participate in problem solving. If there's a recurring issue, like a messy bedroom, instead of nagging, parents can say, "We need a solution to keeping this room tidy. Any ideas?" This invites cooperation, values the child's opinion, and fosters creative thinking. When children feel they have some control over their lives, they become more cooperative and less resistant. Autonomy nurtures a sense of identity and personal power, which is essential for emotional development. In summary, promoting autonomy doesn't mean letting children do whatever they want. It means respecting their ability to think, choose, and learn while providing appropriate guidance. This balance lays the groundwork for raising self-assured and independent individuals. Point 7. Use positive reinforcement instead of punishment. In How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, the authors emphasize the power of positive reinforcement over punitive measures when it comes to encouraging good behavior in children. Rather than focusing on punishment, the book advocates for recognizing and rewarding positive behavior to reinforce it. This method helps to foster a cooperative and respectful relationship between parents and children, and it has a long-lasting positive effect on the child's behavior. Punishment such as yelling or timeouts may address immediate misbehavior, but it often leaves the child feeling resentful, misunderstood, or rebellious. Positive reinforcement, on the other hand, focuses on acknowledging good behavior, making the child feel valued and more motivated to continue acting in a positive manner. The authors suggest reinforcing behaviors as soon as they occur to make the connection between the action and the reward clearer for the child. For instance, if a child helps clean up without being asked, parents can immediately praise the effort with a statement like, "I really appreciate how you helped clean up. It makes everything so much easier." This positive feedback not only boosts the child's self-esteem, but also strengthens the likelihood of the behavior being repeated. Another technique is offering non-material rewards that emphasize intrinsic motivation. Instead of giving material rewards like treats or toys, try to reinforce behavior with praise, encouragement, or extra time spent together. This builds the child's internal motivation to do the right thing, rather than doing something just for the reward. For example, saying, "You worked so hard to finish your homework. I'm really proud of your effort," reinforces effort and persistence, which are far more valuable in the long run than a simple treat. The book also advises parents to avoid over-rewarding or using praise excessively. Instead of using generalized praise like "good job" or "you're amazing," focus on specific behaviors. For example, "You did a great job sharing your toys with your sister today," highlights the specific action the child took, which is more meaningful and motivating. One of the central ideas is that children, like adults, want to feel good about themselves, and positive reinforcement taps into this natural desire. The more children feel recognized for their positive actions, the more likely they are to repeat them. In summary, the book emphasizes that positive reinforcement not only helps children feel good about themselves, but also builds stronger parent-child relationships. It fosters an environment where children are more likely to make good choices and exhibit desirable behavior, not out of fear of punishment, but because they feel respected, encouraged, and understood. Point 8. Give your child choices, not orders. In How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, one important technique the authors suggest for fostering cooperation is giving children choices instead of orders. The idea is to respect the child's need for autonomy while still guiding them toward the desired outcome. By offering choices, parents help children feel more in control of their actions and decisions, which can significantly reduce resistance and power struggles. Children, especially as they get older, have an innate need for independence. When parents simply give orders, it can trigger a rebellious response, as children often feel their autonomy is being undermined. For instance, when a parent says, "Put on your shoes right now," it's a directive with no room for the child to make any decisions. However, when the same parent says, "Would you like to wear the red shoes or the blue ones today?" it gives the child a sense of control over the situation while still achieving the goal of putting on shoes. Offering choices also teaches children decision-making skills. They learn to weigh options, consider consequences, and understand that their choices matter. This not only helps in everyday situations, but also fosters responsibility and accountability as they grow older. For example, instead of telling a child when to go to bed, a parent might say, "Would you like to read for 10 minutes before bed or get ready for bed right now?" This gives the child some say in their routine, while the parent still guides the overall behavior. The book also advises that choices should be limited to avoid overwhelming the child. Too many options can confuse young children, so it's important to provide a manageable number of choices. For instance, instead of saying, "What do you want to do today?" a parent could say, "Would you like to go to the park or the zoo today?" This way, the child still feels empowered but within a framework that the parent can manage. Additionally, the authors suggest that parents use positive framing when presenting choices. This means phrasing the options in a way that highlights the desirable behavior rather than focusing on what the child should avoid. For instance, instead of saying don't forget to do your homework, a better approach would be, would you like to do your homework now or after dinner? By offering choices, parents create an environment where children are more likely to cooperate. The child feels respected, valued, and more likely to make positive decisions because they had a role in choosing the path forward. Point 9. Acknowledge feelings to decrease defiance. In How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, acknowledging a child's feelings is a crucial strategy for fostering effective communication and decreasing defiance. One of the book's central messages is that children need to feel understood before they can be open to resolving problems or changing their behavior. Acknowledging feelings helps children feel validated and cared for, which in turn makes them more receptive to guidance and correction. When children experience emotions such as frustration, anger, or sadness, they often struggle to manage these feelings and express themselves constructively. In such situations, instead of immediately jumping into a solution or offering advice, the book suggests that parents first acknowledge the child's feelings. This doesn't mean agreeing with the child's behavior or condoning negative emotions, but rather demonstrating empathy and understanding. For instance, if a child is throwing a tantrum because they can't have a toy, instead of telling them to stop crying or it's not a big deal, parents can say, I see you're really upset because you wanted that toy. It must be hard not to get what you wanted. This kind of response helps the child feel heard and less alone in their emotions. It also teaches the child that it's okay to feel upset, but there are better ways to express it. Acknowledging feelings has several benefits. 1. Emotional validation. Children learn that their feelings matter and that it's normal to experience emotions like frustration or disappointment. This validation can help them feel less anxious about their feelings and more equipped to deal with them appropriately. 2. Reduces resistance. When children feel understood, they are less likely to resist authority. If a parent acknowledges their frustration before giving a directive, the child may be more willing to listen. For example, I understand you're tired and don't want to do your homework right now. How about we take a 10-minute break before we get started? 3. Builds trust. Acknowledging feelings builds a sense of trust between parents and children. It shows children that their parents care about their emotions and that they won't be dismissed or judged when they express themselves. This trust in turn helps improve the overall parent-child relationship and encourages open communication. 4. Encourages problem solving. Once a child's emotions are acknowledged, they may be more open to talking about solutions or alternatives. For example, after validating the child's feelings about a toy, the parent can gently suggest an alternative, like playing with another toy or waiting for their turn. The book emphasizes that acknowledging feelings is not about solving the problem immediately, but about creating an emotional connection that opens the door for more productive discussions. It sets the stage for positive problem solving and reduces emotional outbursts. Point 10. Offer choices to foster independence and cooperation. In How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, one of the most effective strategies highlighted for reducing power struggles and fostering cooperation is offering children choices. When children are given the opportunity to make decisions, they feel more in control of their environment, which enhances their sense of autonomy. This approach can significantly reduce resistance and create a more cooperative atmosphere. Why offer choices? Children often struggle with following directions because they feel like they have no control over their actions. By offering choices, parents give their children the power to make decisions within reasonable limits. This sense of control can lead to improved behavior because it helps children feel respected and empowered. Offering choices also helps children develop important life skills, such as decision-making, responsibility, and self-regulation. The more children practice making choices, the better they become at understanding the consequences of their decisions, which is a key part of learning and growing. How to offer choices. The key to offering choices effectively is to set boundaries while allowing room for the child's preferences. Parents should present options that are acceptable and manageable, ensuring that no matter which choice the child makes, the parent will be happy with the outcome. For example, instead of saying clean your room right now, try offering choices like, would you like to clean your room now or in 10 minutes? This approach makes the child feel like they are in control of the timing, even though the parent's desired outcome, room cleaning, is still being achieved. Instead of saying, you have to eat vegetables, try offering, would you like to eat your broccoli first, or would you prefer carrots? This gives the child a sense of choice and reduces resistance. Benefits of offering choices. 1. Reduces power struggles. When children are given options, They feel less like they are being commanded and more like active participants. This can significantly decrease defiant behavior, as children are more likely to cooperate when they are involved in decision making. 2. Encourages responsibility. Offering choices helps children develop a sense of responsibility for their actions. By allowing them to choose between two acceptable options, they learn that their decisions have consequences and they become more accountable for their choices. 3. Builds self-esteem. Giving children the chance to make their own decisions boosts their confidence. As they experience success in making decisions, their self-esteem grows, which fosters a sense of competence and independence. 4. Fosters cooperation. When children feel they have a say in what happens, they are more likely to cooperate willingly. This makes daily routines, chores, and tasks much easier to navigate, as children are more invested in the process when they are allowed to make choices. Important considerations. It is essential that the choices offered are realistic and appropriate for the child's age. The options should align with the parents' goals and expectations, but they should also provide the child with some freedom. For instance, if a child is refusing to get ready for bed, instead of dictating when it's time to brush teeth, parents could ask, "Would you like to brush your teeth before or after you put on your pajamas?" Also, parents should remember that choices should be limited. Offering too many choices can overwhelm a child and create confusion. A simple, straightforward set of options, usually 2 or 3, is most effective. In conclusion, offering choices is a simple yet powerful tool in reducing conflicts and encouraging cooperation. It allows children to feel empowered and respected, fostering a positive and collaborative family environment. Conclusion of How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk offers valuable and practical tools for fostering healthy communication between parents and children. The book's fundamental message is that when parents adopt a respectful and empathetic approach, children are more likely to listen, cooperate, and feel understood. Throughout the book, the authors emphasize the importance of shifting from a punitive approach to one that focuses on positive reinforcement, understanding, and connection. One of the book's most significant lessons is the importance of acknowledging children's feelings. By recognizing and validating their emotions, parents can reduce tension and open the door to more effective communication. This helps children feel seen and heard, which fosters a sense of security and trust. The authors also highlight that it's essential to avoid judgmental or dismissive language, as it can lead to power struggles and shut down productive dialogue. Another key takeaway is the power of using language that is clear, specific, and solution-oriented. Instead of giving directives or making demands, the book encourages parents to offer choices, provide gentle guidance, and use humor when appropriate. This reduces resistance, empowers children to take responsibility, and promotes self-regulation. In addition, the book explores various techniques such as active listening, giving children autonomy through choices, and using praise effectively. Each of these strategies can contribute to raising children who are not only cooperative but also confident, resilient, and capable of managing their emotions and behaviors. Ultimately, the book emphasizes that parenting is not about being perfect, but about being present and engaged. By fostering a positive, respectful, and empathetic environment, parents can create strong, trusting relationships with their children, making it easier to guide them through challenges and support their development into healthy, well-adjusted individuals. In conclusion, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk provides a wealth of practical strategies for parents seeking to improve communication with their children. It empowers parents to build stronger, more collaborative relationships with their kids, fostering an environment of mutual respect and understanding. By implementing the techniques in the book, parents can encourage their children's growth, independence, and emotional well-being, all while reducing stress and frustration in their parenting journey.